The following story has been brought to you by StoriesToInspire.org.
I got to tell you an amazing story I heard from Rabbi Martin, the English principal of Yeshiva of Brooklyn. The story happened very recently around the time of COVID. There was a teacher who probably is the oldest teacher around, 92 years old and still teaching. You're talking about someone that was a survivor of the Holocaust. And she's a spunky teacher and probably ready to retire already. But she heard that one of her students was getting married. And she went to wish Mazel Tov. And the Chasna Hall was at a very high level, like a building that had many Chasna Halls in one building. I'm not so sure where, maybe in Borough Park. And she had to take the elevator or whatever, the stairs. It was upstairs, I think the 6th floor or something like that. And she says, I want to say Mazel Tov to the Kala. So the Kala was called, and she says, Mazel Tov, Kala, call me your chassid. It's a Hasidic wedding, it's separate. How am I supposed to call the chassid? But if a 92-year-old bubby from that long ago asks, she sends messages, and they have to get the chassid. The chassid comes, and he says, Mazel Tov, and the Mora says, I want you to know you got a very good girl. Thank you, Hashem, you got such a good girl. And the chassid is very grateful, and he's about to go off, and she says, please, call me your parents. I want to speak to your parents. Okay, fine, no problem. And somehow he gets Don's parents. There's the elderly woman here wants to talk to you. So the father comes and she whispers, tell me about your son. I should tell you about my son. Yes, tell me about it. Okay, if you must know, the father admitted that he had a hard time in yeshiva. And Baruch Hashem, he got a good girl though. And she said she wasn't trying to ask for Lashon Hara. She simply was trying to figure out, how this boy was worthy to such a good girl. So the father said, I'll tell you the truth. It's a real miracle. Because before COVID, he was in 6 different yeshivas and he was kicked out. He must have been a real troublesome boy if every single yeshiva could not keep him there. Who knows what type of kid he was. And the parents didn't know what to do with him. And then when COVID broke out and yeshivas and shuls were closed, they thought, Oy, now without even a yeshiva to go to, who knows if he's not going to become a bum. But they were amazed. They saw that even in the quarantine, he would take out a Gemara and open it for 1 hour, and the next day for 2, and eventually he was a masmid. They never saw their son learn like this, and they had no explanation. But anyway, he told the Mora that Baruch Hashem, he vaxed us even during that crisis, and Baruch Hashem got such a good girl. So the Mora says, now I'm going to tell you the second half of the story. What do you mean? Let me explain. Before we said goodbye to our students during that time when schools were closed, I told my students, you should all say a parak tehillim for your future chassid. I instructed every girl in my class that you should say tehillim because your future chassid is not in a yeshiva. A yeshiva protects a boy from the craziness of society, and I'm afraid that your chassanim are in trouble without a yeshiva. And I told the girls to say a parak tehillim every day. When we got back after COVID and schools reopened, I asked my class, so who said a parak tehillim every day? And suddenly a girl walked in late and she said, Mora, I said tehillim during COVID. She says, really? Did you say the parak every day like I asked? She says, no, Mora. I said the entire tehillim every day. And that caused that her future chassid, who was a bum, who was a troublemaker, who was Am Haaretz, is now with a chishek to open a Gemara, to learn, to shtay, and they got married. Wonder of wonders! When you say a parak tehillim for someone, do you realize what you do? It's like you're giving them spiritual vitamins. Half of the fellas, she said, that was the other side of the story. And the man said, now I get it. Now I chap on my son was Baruch Hashem. to such a good Maimon.
Enjoyed this story? Come again. Bring a friend. StoriesToInspire.org